Titanic discovery. The Navy made a smoking gun find while on a top-secret Atlantic mission. The U.S. Navy made an astonishing find more than 3,000 meters below the North Atlantic. This is while it was on a top-secret mission during the Cold War. This is what declassified details revealed. This is by Callum Hoare on Express UK. The RMS Titanic sank early hours of April 15, 1912. It was 4 days after the ship's maiden voyage from Southampton to destination was New York City, and it went sour. The White Star liner, the owner of the ship, had an estimated 2,224 people on board. And that's when it struck an iceberg at around 11:40 p.m. And her sinking 2 hours and 40 minutes later. Following the tragic events of what happened, numerous expeditions were launched using sonar to map the seabed in the hope of discovering the remains of the Titanic, but they were unsuccessful. It was not until 1985 when the wreck was finally located by Robert Ballard of the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, but in December last year, Mr. Ballard admitted this expedition was not entirely scientific. He was speaking about the now declassified events. He couldn't speak of them before, now they're declassified. Ballard said the voyage was part of a secret U.S. military mission. He had to recover 2 sunken nuclear submarines at the bottom of the ocean. He had to find 2 sunken nuclear submarines. He told CNN in December, quote, "They did not want the world to know that, so I had to have a cover story." The U.S. Navy offered him the funding, an opportunity to search for the Titanic, but only if he first explored the USS Thresher and the USS Scorpion. They were 2 American nuclear submarines that sank in the 1960s. These vessels had perished during the Cold War, and the U.S. government wanted to learn the environmental impact these nuclear submarines had in the area that they sank in, to find out whether foul play also was involved in their sinking. Mr. Ballard explained, we knew where the subs were. We knew where the subs were. What they wanted me to do was go back and not have the Russians follow me, because we were interested in the nuclear weapons that were on the Scorpion and also what the nuclear reactors were doing to the environment. The press were totally oblivious to what I was really doing down there. Isn't that amazing? And he went on to explain, when we found the Titanic, we naturally were very excited because it was a tough job. We got it, scored the winning goal at the buzzer. So at 2 a.m. on September 1st, 1985, Ballard and several crew members watched as their robotic submarine gave them images of the Titanic. The U.S. Navy did not expect Ballard to find the Titanic, and that's why the event was classified for over than 3 decades. And then since then, there have been several other visits to the sunken vessel, the Titanic that is, but none quite as surprising as last week's. In the first expedition in 14 years, divers discovered the sunken ship in a shocking condition, as a number of the once prized sections of the Olympic-class liner have been lost to sea as salt corrosion and metal-eating bacteria gradually consumed the remains of the Titanic. Titanic historian Park Stevenson said that whole deck hole on the side it collapsed, taking with it the staterooms, and the deterioration is going to continue advancing. The captain's bathtub is a favorite image among the Titanic enthusiasts, and that's now gone, he said. Now, concerning the sinking of the Titanic, that it struck an iceberg, there's an expert that claims that this proved that ship did not hit an iceberg. It's impossible, he said. By Callum Horan on Express UK, I'll leave a link below for you. The Titanic, he says, was not struck by an iceberg, but by something else floating in the sea. This is according to an expert on the subject. And that's astonishing. Titanic, we know, sank April 14th, 15th, 2 hours. Well, actually, it struck about 11 something. It took 2 hours, so basically on the 15th it went under. In 1912, during the maiden voyage from Southampton to New York City, the British passenger liner, under the captaincy of Edward Smith, roughly 2,200 passengers on board when it collided with an iceberg shortly before midnight. It was an accident that saw more than 1,500 people in demise. But that story is not the real case, according to a former professional mariner who is experienced in the waters of the North Atlantic. I saw the North Atlantic full of icebergs. This was when I was I was very young, and going from Liverpool to Montreal on the Queen Elizabeth II. And we passed the North Atlantic and we did see an iceberg. Amazing. From very far away, thank goodness. Now, Captain L.M. Collins released a book in 2002 and it's titled The Sinking of the Titanic, An Ice Pilot's Perspective. This is where he proposes 3 reasons at least why he believes the Titanic actually hit pack ice, and not an iceberg, but pack ice. Following the release of the book, he said, I'm convinced beyond everything that it was impossible to hit an iceberg. Instead, the Titanic transited a strip of Arctic pack ice. The pack ice, the Arctic pack ice, is multi-layered old ice, and it's very hard ice. Numerous ships sunk the same way because they were sliced open at the hull. There's like a knife going through the hull. There is no credible evidence that Titanic hit or was in contact with an iceberg. Captain Collins detailed in his book how roughly 10 minutes before the sinking, the 2 lookouts spotted what they believed to be haze on the horizon, and it extended about 20 degrees on either side of the ship's bow, this haze. Captain Collins claimed that what they actually saw was not haze, but a strip of pack ice. He also detailed how the ice was reported as 60 foot high by the lookouts, 100 foot high by Quartermaster Rowe on the deck, and only very low in the water by 4th Officer Boxhall. Now, Captain Collins believes this difference in heights was due to an optical phenomenon that is well known in ice navigators, where the flat sea and extreme cold distorts the appearance of objects near the waterline, and it makes them look to be higher, to be the height of the ship's lights. Physics also dictates the Titanic could not have struck an iceberg, he says. He explains that something known as the Bernoulli effect means it is not possible. According to Captain Collins, if the ship had been steaming ahead at 37 feet per second and slamming into an iceberg reported to be the size of a hotel, the Titanic side would have been ripped out instantly. He said this in 2012. It would have sank in minutes, not hours. And there's the physics part of it, so it could not have happened. Captain Smith, who was in charge of the Titanic on that night, has previously been branded a chancer for his antics. Chancer. Amazon's Prime 2011 documentary Titanic Arrogance claimed it was possible Captain Smith was not fit to lead the ship. Captain Smith, known as EJ, was the obvious choice as White Star's main commander. He had taken Olympic on her main voyage in previous years. He was a sociable and popular captain, especially among the millionaire elites, but he was nothing less than a chancer. Over the years, he had been involved in a number of scrapes and near misses, and most recent being the Olympic and HMS Hawk. Captain Smith was also in charge of Olympic Titanic sister ship when it collided with a British warship September 20th, 1911. So basically that's like 6 or 7 months before. He had a collision, and they still put him on this, the maiden voyage of Titanic. Now, although the crash left 2 of Olympic compartments filled and one of her propeller shafts twisted, Smith managed to make it back to Southampton. The Royal Navy found White Star to be at fault for the incident, claiming the vessel's massive size generated a suction that pulled Hawk into her side. Can you imagine how huge that must have been, the Olympic? Just, in other words, it was the physics of the water and the waves, and the goufionero, they say in Greek, that's hollow water. So, just months later, he was the captain behind one of the most infamous nautical disasters in history. They put him to be the captain of the Titanic. So, pack ice as opposed to iceberg. That's a big difference. I'll leave links below for you for this. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.